All right, I've had a few questions about pixel proportioning on the F16 and the F48, so I thought of a potential way to explain this might be to use Welch's fruit snacks. Number one, because they're small, and I think that will be a good illustration. But the other reason is they're delicious. All right, I don't know how well you can see this illustration. I'll give you a better shot. But we have 10 full-size fruit snacks, and then we have one that I quartered to represent about 25 or 24. So there is 1024 pixels on one port on, for example, an F16. Now, if you add, for example, an expansion port, we can move some of these over to the expansion port to support pixels on that. So we'll move 600 pixels over. All right. So now we move 600 pixels over to the expansion card, whereas the main card now has 424, I guess. And then so if you add a third expansion card, then we can move some of these over. So now I have 300 on the second expansion card, 300 on the first expansion card, and still 424 on the main board. So, piece of cake, or fruit snack, if you will. Hi, welcome to Can a Spader Christmas. All right, this video is sponsored by the fine folks at pixelcontroller.com, makers of the internationally acclaimed Falcon Pixel Controller. I've received some variation of this question over the last few months, and decided to make a video covering the differences between the F16 V3 and the F48. Now, both controllers support up to 48 pixel ports, and the main components of both boards are the same. So it is easy to understand why there might be some confusion as to which one is right for you. There's also been some confusion as to how many pixels you can run off of one port, so I'll cover that in some detail as well. I'll start with a bare F16 V3 and expand that because it kind of makes it easier to understand pixel proportioning, especially for the F48. Now, the F16 by itself has 16 ports. Each port can support 1024 pixels per port. So port 1 can have 1024 pixels, and port 2 can have 1024 pixels, all the way down to port 16, which can also have 1024 pixels, for a total of 16,384 pixels. Now, you can do that, but it's really not practical to run a show that way for most of us anyway. To be able to access the controller from a web interface, the controller and your computer need to be on the same network. So just plug the controller into your home network, assuming your computer is plugged into your home network. Let the controller automatically get an IP address. It will show up on the display. And then on your computer, open a web browser to that IP address. And you should see something like this. So for an F16 V3, this is what comes up. It's a different controller. You'll have a little bit different interface, but it's kind of a similar deal. So if we go to output settings and string ports, if we just have a single F16, we see 16 ports, which corresponds to the 16 ports on the main board. And you'll see up here it says main board only. So each one of these 16 ports can support 1024 pixels. You have 1024 here, 1024 here, 1024 here, all the way down. Now if we add a 16 port expansion board, we now have a total of 32 ports, but they share the 1024. So port 1 on the main board and port 17 on the expansion board share 1024 pixels. So we will change this to one expansion board. And now you'll see a couple of things show up here. So this little slider shows up, and I'll explain that in a minute. But we also get ports 17 through 32 showing up, which corresponds, so 17, 18, 19, all these are the expansion board ports. 1 through 16 is the main board ports. Now when you do this, you immediately half the number of pixels for the main board and use that other half for the expansion board. So as you see here, we're at 512 and 512. So the left side of this is the main board, and the right side of this is the expansion board. So you can change this if you wanted to have 300 on the main board and 724 for each of the outputs on the expansion card. You could do that, or you could reverse it. You could do 300 here, and you can use the arrow key to go one at a time. Do 300 here and 724 here. So you're balancing, however, the first 16 ports, how many pixels do you want them to support, and then the last 16. So set this way, the main board 1 through 16, each one of those now has 724 pixels. And then on the expansion board, ports 17 through 32 only support 300 pixels per port. Like I say, anytime you change this slider, you're changing the allocation of the 1024 ports between the two boards. If we add a second 16 port expansion board, we now have a total of 48 pixel ports, but again, they share the 1024. So port 1 on the main board, port 17 on the first expansion board, and port 33 on the second expansion board share 1024 pixels. Now let's say 32 ports just isn't enough, you need more ports. So if we add a second expansion board, a third card, we add 16 more ports. So 33 through 48 is now added to this entire system, and we have two little sliders. So we've got one here with 512, and we've got one here that has 256 on each side. So the main board can support 512 pixels, 1 through 16. And then 17 through 32 supports 256 pixels. And 33 through 48 supports 256. And you can move these around however you want. So I think, what is it, 340 something is about 341, 341, okay, 342, 341, through some combination of that is about as equally spaced as you're going to get it, and this will make more sense when I go to the F48. So right now you've got 48 pixel ports. They each support roughly an equal number. So these first 16, it's 342, and then the two expansion cards both support 341. So that's the F16 V3. Now let's take a look at the F48. You can think of the F48 as a fully expanded F16. If you rotate the F48 90 degrees to the left, the slider matches up with the now column of ports. So the left 4 ports are the left part of the slider, the middle 4 ports are the middle part of the slider, and the right 4 ports are the right part of the slider. The F48 doesn't have any pixel ports. It uses differential receivers to connect to the pixels, these 4 right here. Each differential receiver has 4 pixel ports, so 4 differential receiver ports on the F48 is 16 pixel ports. 4 receivers, 4 ports on the receiver. Now if we take that over to the F48 and go to the string ports page, the F48 is set up similar to an F16 with 2 expansion boards, meaning all of the ports are there. So we have these sliders here and all 3 of them are there, and we have 48 ports available. The top row is set by this first section. The middle section determines the middle row, and the last section over here determines the bottom row. Now the difference on the F48 is that each differential receiver has got 4 ports. So that means any differential receiver plugged into the top row will have 300 pixels for each of the 4 ports. So there's 4 ports, 300 pixels. That means a differential receiver can support 1200 pixels with it set this way. The way I have it set here, same for the middle row, 300, and then the bottom row is set to 424. Now I can still, change these to whatever I want, but that's just the way I have it set up on this controller currently. I did a quick cost analysis of the 2 systems. So an F16 and an F48, both of those boards are $200 for the main board. An F16 has 16 pixel ports, whereas an F48 has 0. So to get the same capacity as an F16, you would need to buy 4 differential receivers at $20 each. So that's an additional $80. 16 port expansion cards for the F16 are $50 each. So 48 ports with the F16 would run you $300. 48 ports with an F48, assuming you got all 12 differential receivers, runs $440. All right, well then why didn't everybody just buy the F16 then? If all your props are within about 20 to 30 feet of a central location, the F16 makes more sense. If your props are just spread out over a very wide area, an F48 might be a better way to go. Now, not to confuse the issue further, but instead of a 16-port expansion board, you could use a 4-port differential expansion board. So what that allows you to do is connect 4 differential receivers up to the F16. Now, with the smart receivers, that is actually 3 in a chain, so that's a total of 12 smart receivers for a single 4-port differential expansion board. So that's 48 ports right there. The differential expansion is $40, and then each of the smart receivers is $20. Displays are like snowflakes. Everyone is different. So you're gonna have to decide which way is best for your particular situation. Now, if you're just starting out, maybe just get an F16 your first year and run with that. A year or so down the road, you get more pixels and you can run both an F16 and an F48. I hope you found some of that information useful. If you have any questions, please leave them below. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.
Now, I shot an email.
So I got 6 of these, and so I got 5 of these when I started relaxing a little bit, and then BAM!